All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that you may be experiencing on the water right now, and it's a very, very difficult thing to kind of go through, especially if you're new to fishing. You may not quite understand what's going on, but what we're going to be talking about is the post-spawn funk. Okay, so we always refer to it as the post-spawn funk, and what it is it's a period of time after a group of fish get done spawning, they become very inactive. Okay, and you're going to have fish that are, no matter what lake you're on, what river system, it doesn't really matter, you're always going to have active and inactive fish, and it's going to be your job each time you go to find active fish. Because if you're fishing for inactive fish, there's just not going to be much going on. But either way, I'm going to break down what happens after these fish spawn, where do they go, what they're doing, and different ways that you can catch them. So stay tuned, this is something you don't want to miss. All right, everybody, so before we jump into everything, if this kind of content helps you, make sure to give me a thumbs up. It helps a whole lot. Subscribe down below. I got you covered when it comes to anything bass fishing, and comment if you ever have any questions or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys. So one of the most important questions that I get asked is, where do these fish go after they get done spawning? And it's actually a lot more simple than you think. Typically what happens is these fish, as they migrate back to spawn, you'll have fish that migrate and fish that are stationary. So the fish that migrate are the typical fish that you see and you catch during the summer on the main lake. So those fish migrate into the creeks and into pockets to spawn. Now typically what they do, well, when they go to migrate, they travel on a steep contours, what I refer to as a highway. Okay, and those steep contours on your graph where the lines are real close together, those are sharp contours. That's where a drop off is, and these fish travel back and forth, migrating to their areas. Now here's the thing, let's say they go back there and spawn and they're getting ready to move back out. What happens? It's like the bite just shuts off. It takes a toll on largemouth, big time. The spawn takes a big toll on largemouth. They get in what we call that funk, where they act like they just don't feel good. They're exhausted. Probably, I don't know if it has a lot to do with necessarily malnourishment or anything like that, but I think it's just very stressful for the fish being, vulnerable for a certain amount of time. It's probably stressing the entire time, and just it takes a toll on it. It's wore out. It doesn't really get that time to move out, suspend, and rest, which is what they do. After they get done spawning, they'll start migrating out to like these secondary points and stuff like that. But maybe you're fishing the secondary points like I am and you're not catching anything. You're like, okay, well, they're supposed to be migrating back out. Well, they will be in that area, but not exactly where you typically catch them. So, during the pre-spawn, you were catching them up on the point and around the point and stuff like that. During the post-spawn, they typically like to move out, like where my boat is right now, in the middle of the channel and in a creek, and they will just suspend. Same with the pockets and stuff like that. Now, you've got two options when that happens. Number one, slow down and finesse them. Okay, so whether that's shaking a minnow, a shaky head, maybe some type of jigging spoon, flutter spoon, but the smaller flutter spoons and stuff like that, maybe that's the style of fishing you want to go with. Or you can do what I've always done, and it's kind of one of those things where you can have a trade-off. Okay, so if you go with option one, you may have a better chance of catching bigger fish and quantity. If you go the other way, which is option two, which is what I like to do, and make them react. Okay, so when I find those fish, I'm trying to make those fish react, whether that's with a square bill. Number one is going to be a jerk bait, period. A hard jerk bait, 99% of the time, that's going to be the way that I go, because they're either going to move out of the way or either they're going to bite that bait. All of us in the sport of bass fishing are always looking for something to give us that edge, where it help us catch more fish, stuff like that, but we also want to do it in an affordable way, right? So one of the biggest companies I can tell you about right now is Vantage Tackle. Okay, Vantage Tackle is an online retail site. Basically what he does is he sells custom built baits that are made from here in the US, from regular people like me and you, who just love the sport of bass fishing. Hand quality care goes into every single bait. I can guarantee it, because I've used just about everything that they got. But we're talking hand tied chatter baits, spinner baits, crankbaits, soft plastics, anything you can imagine. If you purchase anything over $100, you get free shipping, but also if you want to save some money, use Colton 25, you'll get 10% off. Helps me out a whole lot, helps those guys out a whole lot. Make sure to check me out at Colton Posey Fishing. So no matter which option you choose, you're kind of going to be giving probably a trade-off on that day, okay? Whether you're sacrificing quality or quantity. Me personally, I just want to catch a bunch. I don't care if they're this big or this big. It doesn't really matter. I'm going out to have fun, and that's the way that I have fun fishing. So, but I'll typically like to make them react, if at all that it's possible. Now, if I go a couple hours max and I don't get bit, I don't get that movement or anything like that, then I'm going to swap to the other one, because if I'm not catching anything, I'm not catching anything. But either way, I just wanted to let you guys know, because I've been getting questions from you guys, whether that's in the comment section on YouTube or whether that's private messages on Facebook and Instagram. What's going on? I went from catching fish to not catching fish, and now it's just like I can rarely ever get a bite. That's typically what happens. This is a post-spawn funk. It just happens every year after the fish get done spawning. The good news is, if you're fishing a spotted bass fishery, it's not as notorious. Those spotted bass, they kind of just move up and spawn, and then they're right back out chasing and stuff. But you're going to find a lot of those spotted bass doing the same thing, but they're going to be a lot more active. Those are the ones that you're going to see cruising down your creek channel, and then if you take your eyes off of them, move your sonar a little bit or anything like that, they're gone. You're going to miss them. But now, let's say you don't have forward facing sonar, so you can't look out in front of your boat and tell exactly, hey, these fish are out in the channel suspended. I've got one in front of me at 60 foot, 5 foot deep. It's an old trick that we used for years before forward-facing sonar ever was thought about, and I'm talking about before the old pan optics, okay? But just straight up 2D sonar, okay? So run your 2D sonar, and what I like to do is make sure that it's scrolling quickly, okay? Because the issue is, if you've got your 2D sonar moving this slow, then it may show a fish, and then it's going to continue on, and then by the time you get to the end of the screen and you're getting new data, that fish is just long gone. You're not really throwing it anything. So I like to have my screen moving really quickly, and I like a scope on, okay? I can't remember what it's called on Humminbird or anything like that, but Lowrance is called a scope, and what it is, it's got this little sidebar in front of your sonar, and it's live data, okay? Like if you drop your bait straight under the trolling motor, you're going to see your bait in that little bar. So that's a big time help. So you can catch those fish that are directly below you using drop shots and stuff like that. That's another great technique to really start exploring this time of year, especially instead of using stuff like robo worms and stuff like that. Pick up like a tiny fluke or some type of minnow style bait and rig it just like you would the worm. So in conclusion, most of your fish is going to be in the middle of your creek channel, closer towards the mouth, is typically where the most active fish are going to be, because those are the fish that spawned earlier and they're moving back out, so they're actively feeding. They fed up a little bit, they're getting more energy, they're getting a little bit more aggressive. The further you get back, it's kind of going to die down a little bit, okay? So I typically like to stay a little bit closer to the mouths of the creeks. Now I'm not talking like right at the mouth, okay? But now that doesn't mean they won't be right at the mouth, but what I'm saying is I typically start right at the mouth and I'll work my way about a quarter of the way back. So one of the other things that I can tell you to really watch out for is Thermocline. So I noticed today when I was on the lake, there's a Thermocline at 28 foot. So the Thermocline wasn't just like this absolute just clear as day picture, but it was starting to blotch up in that 28 foot just about everywhere that I've been. So that's starting to tell me that we're fixing to really start getting in that summertime pattern. So I really need to focus on these fish that are migrating out. Once again, middle of your creek channels, the suspended fish, jerk baits is going to be a great option. Square bill crankbaits, yes, square bill crankbaits in open water. Burn, stop, burn, stop. You'll get a lot of bites doing that. If you need to go with a finesse approach, maybe there's no wind or anything like that, super calm, your drop shots, your dart head minnows, stuff like that is going to be wonderful options. So guys, if the video helps you at all, make sure to give me a thumbs up. It helps me out a ton. Subscribe down below. I got you covered when it comes to anything bass fishing. Comment down below if you have any questions or you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you folks. Also, All baits that I'm talking about and baits that I use will be down in the description below. And also, while you're down there, please check out my sponsor links. It helps me out a ton. If you purchase anything from them, make sure to use my code. You'll get a discount on it, and it helps me out a ton, helps those guys out a ton. Either way, guys, I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.